Ethan had always prided himself on his loyalty and commitment to his wife, Sophia. They had been married for 8 years, and though they had their ups and downs, Ethan believed they shared an unbreakable bond. That belief shattered one evening when he found a series of suspicious messages on Sophia's phone while she was in the shower. At first, Ethan tried to dismiss the gut-wrenching feeling gnawing at him. He thought there had to be an explanation, but the messages were unmistakable. A series of flirtatious exchanges with someone named Alex, culminating in plans for a secret rendezvous. Ethan's world tilted on its axis, but instead of confronting her immediately, he decided to play the long game. Ethan began gathering evidence. Over the next few months, he tracked Sophia's activities discreetly. He installed software on their shared devices and noticed her increasingly elaborate excuses for staying out late or working weekends. What hurt the most was her apparent ease at lying to him. She would kiss him goodbye, claiming she was meeting a friend, while Ethan knew exactly where she was going. During those months, Ethan didn't let on that he knew. He pretended everything was fine, though his heart grew colder with every passing day. He poured his energy into planning his next move. This wasn't going to be a typical confrontation. Ethan wanted to send a message she would never forget. One evening, Sophia returned home to find Ethan unusually cheerful. He had cooked dinner and poured them both a glass of wine. Over the meal, he told her about a surprise weekend getaway he had planned for their upcoming anniversary. Sophia's face lit up with a mixture of surprise and guilt, but she agreed without hesitation. When the weekend arrived, Ethan drove them to a luxurious beach resort. The place was breathtaking. White sands, turquoise waters, and a private villa that screamed romance. Sophia seemed genuinely touched, though Ethan noticed her sneaking glances at her phone. On the second evening, Ethan suggested a private dinner on the beach. As they sipped champagne under the moonlight, Ethan pulled out a small box and handed it to her. Sophia looked puzzled but opened it to find a key. "What's this for?" she asked, smiling. "It's the key to your new place," Ethan replied calmly. Sophia's smile faltered. "What do you mean?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "It's the apartment I rented for you. Since you and Alex seem so close, I thought you'd appreciate having a space where you can be together without sneaking around." Her face drained of color. "Ethan, Save it," he interrupted, his voice sharp. "I've known for months, Sophia. Every lie, every excuse, every time you said you were with a friend, I know. I've seen the messages, the photos, the hotel bookings." Tears filled her eyes. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. No, Sophia," he said, cutting her off again. "A mistake is forgetting our anniversary or burning dinner. What you did was a choice, a series of choices. And now I'm making mine." Ethan stood and tossed an envelope onto the table. Inside were divorce papers, along with a detailed record of her affair. "Sign these," he said coldly. "You can keep the apartment for 6 months. After that, you're on your own." Sophia sobbed, but Ethan felt no sympathy. For months, he had mourned the woman he thought she was. Now, he was ready to move on, leaving her to face the consequences of her betrayal. As Ethan walked away from the table, he felt a weight lifting off his shoulders. The revenge wasn't about hurting her. It was about reclaiming his dignity and showing her that actions have consequences. Sophia had made her choice, and now, so had he. The days following that evening at the beach resort were a blur for Sophia. She spent the first few hours after Ethan handed her the divorce papers in a state of disbelief. She couldn't grasp the reality of what was happening. Her heart raced as she frantically tried to apologize, to explain, to make him understand that it was a mistake, but nothing she said seemed to register. Ethan, on the other hand, was resolute. He'd spent weeks planning this moment, carefully crafting every detail of her downfall. He didn't offer her any comfort or hope for reconciliation. He was done. There was no going back for him. The following days were excruciating for Sophia. The cold, hard truth settled in, and she realized the gravity of her betrayal. The apartment key, a symbol of her affair with Alex, now sat on her dresser, mocking her. She had thought she could keep both worlds separate, her family and her secret life. But now, both were falling apart. Ethan had given her a painful gift, the chance to see her own life unravel. Sophia tried to reach out to Ethan after they returned from the trip, but he avoided her. He had already made it clear that his heart was no longer in their marriage. It wasn't just the affair that destroyed their relationship. It was the constant lying, the manipulation, the erosion of trust. Sophia had underestimated the depth of his pain and the extent to which he was willing to go for his own peace. As the weeks passed, the divorce papers were finalized. Sophia moved into the apartment Ethan had arranged for her, but it felt cold and lifeless. It wasn't a place of freedom or excitement. It was a prison of her own making. Alex, the man she had betrayed her husband for, came to visit occasionally, but there was no joy in their interactions. He never took her seriously, and the affair that had once been a thrilling escape now felt hollow. The weight of her decisions pressed down on her every day. Ethan, meanwhile, found a strange sense of relief. He threw himself into work, spending time with friends he had neglected, and began rediscovering parts of himself that had been lost in the haze of his marriage. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but there was an odd comfort in knowing he had taken control of his own future. He was no longer trapped in a marriage built on lies. Months later, Sophia tried to reach out one final time. She sent Ethan a message asking if they could meet to talk. She claimed that she had changed, that she was sorry, and that she wanted to make things right. Ethan read her message and felt a brief twinge of sadness, but it was quickly replaced by clarity. He knew that their marriage was over. There was no going back to what they once had. Instead of agreeing to meet, Ethan responded simply, "Asterisk, you made your choice and I've made mine. It's over, Sophia." Asterisk. He never heard from her again. In the end, Ethan didn't seek revenge in the way most would expect. There was no dramatic confrontation, no cruel punishment. Instead, his revenge was in reclaiming his own life, his own peace, and his own happiness. It was a subtle, quiet victory, but it was enough. And as for Sophia, she was left to face the consequences of her actions, with only the emptiness of her choices to keep her company. Sophia's life, once filled with promise and the illusion of happiness, continued to spiral downward in the months that followed. Her affair with Alex had left her more isolated than ever, and the harsh reality of being alone in the apartment Ethan had arranged for her was a constant reminder of what she had lost. The excitement of sneaking around, the thrill of secret messages, and the false sense of freedom that Alex had promised her all evaporated, leaving a bitter taste of regret. Alex, who had once seemed like an escape from her life with Ethan, grew distant. He no longer showered her with attention, and the romantic gestures that once made her feel desire became sparse. Sophia began to notice his lack of commitment, his reluctance to invest in a future with her. It wasn't long before she realized that Alex had never been in it for the long haul. He was just another chapter in the story of her poor choices. Meanwhile, Ethan's life continued to evolve. The pain of his wife's betrayal had not disappeared, but it was becoming more manageable. He began to date again, though he remained cautious. He wasn't in a rush to find someone new. He wanted to heal first, to rediscover who he was outside of the confines of a broken marriage. His friends noticed a shift in him. He was lighter, more confident, and seemed to be finding joy in the simple things again. One night, about 6 months after their divorce, Ethan ran into Sophia at a mutual friend's party. She was standing by the bar, sipping a drink and looking out of place. Her once carefully styled appearance now seemed disheveled, as if the weight of everything had caught up with her. She noticed him immediately, her face flushing with a mix of guilt and hope. "Ethan," she said quietly, her voice trembling, "can we talk?" He studied her for a moment, remembering the woman who had once been the love of his life, but also the woman who had broken his trust so completely. His heart no longer ached with the same intensity it once did. Instead, It was a dull pain, a scar that would never fully heal, but would no longer control him. "There's nothing left to talk about, Sophia," Ethan replied calmly, his voice steady. "You made your choices, and I made mine. I've moved on." Sophia opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She wanted to explain, to apologize, but she knew deep down that no words would undo the damage. Ethan wasn't the man she had left behind. He had rebuilt himself into someone stronger, someone who no longer needed her. With a sigh, Sophia nodded, tears welling in her eyes, and turned to walk away. Ethan watched her retreating figure, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. He knew she had to face the consequences of her actions, and he was no longer responsible for her pain. In the months that followed, their paths crossed only occasionally, and each time, Sophia seemed to have lost a little more of the spark she once had. She became more reclusive, spending her days in the apartment that once felt like a fresh start but now felt like a cage. She had no one to blame but herself. Ethan, on the other hand, continued to move forward. He had met someone new, a woman who appreciated him for who he was, and who had shown him that love could exist without betrayal. He no longer held on to the past, and with each passing day, the anger and heartbreak faded into distant memories. Sophia's revenge, if there had been any intention of it, had backfired. She had tried to take control of her life by leaving Ethan for a fleeting affair, but in the end, it was Ethan who had gained the upper hand. He had found peace, while she was left to grapple with the emptiness of her choices. As time went on, the pain of the past faded, and Ethan realized that his true revenge was simply living well. Living without regret, living with the confidence that he was worthy of something better than the betrayal he had endured. And for Sophia, the lesson was painfully clear. Actions have consequences, and sometimes the hardest lesson of all is learning to live with them.